All right, we are live. Hey guys, today on the Greg and Paul show, we've got Beth DeBaptiste, DeBaptiste, like John DeBaptiste.
You got it.
Got it. Okay. You are with Star Title. You are the vice president. You are an attorney.
Correct.
In-house counsel. This is your second time being on the live stream into the Connect page here this week.
Yay, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for the double header. We appreciate it. So Greg and I just wanted to kind of sit down with you again today to talk more about title, things we can, I think Greg, you were just kind of talking about the goals. We want to help people avoid problems, right? Get to a smooth transaction. We want to, we want to talk about the transaction, the life of a seller and the life of an agent and a buyer working towards a closing here. And there's so many things that have to take place. We want the closing, the title experience to be like the icing on the cake, the bow on the present, roll out the red carpet, great experience. So we think we can hopefully help people get a little closer to that through this conversation, things they can anticipate, things they can do better. So Greg, I know you've got a bunch of questions over there.
Yeah, I want to give a brief bio of Beth, but before I do, I just want to say that we want to help agents anticipate potential issues long before they happen. And one of our goals has always been, as a real estate broker / title company, that we should know how to do this as well as anybody. We should be able to help agents anticipate. And we believe we now have the staff that we've been seeking and searching for a long time. And so I'm excited to introduce Beth. And just so that all of you know, Beth was did you call it an assistant or an associate prosecutor in Oakland?
Assistant prosecutor in Oakland County. When I was there, there were 110 assistant prosecutors.
Wow.
Big office.
Is that during L. Brooks Patterson's reign down there?
It was during Brooks' reign. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I think some people will recognize that name. And then you went and started your own practice for 18 years after that?
No. I didn't have my own practice. I actually, after that, went to a very small firm in downtown Mount Clemens where our primary client was the Macomb County Road Commission. And then about a year and a half after that, I ended up, of all places, at First American Title. And I was there for about 4 months as claims counsel when they had some corporate cutbacks. And I actually lost my job the day before 9/11, the actual 9/11. And then 2 weeks later, I started at a firm in Bloomfield Hills by the name of May, Simpson and Strout, a very small boutique firm that specialized in basically all things real estate, but primarily involving construction lien foreclosures and title insurance defense, where we defended title insurance underwriters. So, and then from there, our firm transitioned to Butts Along, and I was there for just about 3 years, and then took a position with First American as underwriting counsel. So I litigated for all of 20 years and some.
And that's where we found you, was at First American Title.
Right.
And you were, I think, working with, a lot of the agents will remember Wes Parkinson, and Wes was there with you at that time.
Exactly.
And so I think where I want to start here is, when I look at real estate today, I know that a lot of the title companies are doing a lot of the work for agents that agents used to have to do on their own. And that started with the agent getting the title commitment, and then the agent having to go through there and work with a title company to clear all the requirements that were on Schedule B, typically, right?
Right.
And then maybe there was something on Schedule A, and then there might have been some other things written in there. But can tell us, what are the 5 things that an agent should look at on the title policy immediately when they get it, so that they can begin to anticipate what they are going to need to do?
Right. So that's a great question, because you have to think about what does the title company see first. And the first thing that we're seeing as we're entering an order is most often a purchase agreement. And a purchase agreement is a contract. And a contract, that can be upheld in a court of law. So we have to look at what the terms of that contract are. Who are the parties to that contract? What are the terms? I mean, how soon is it supposed to close? Is title insurance being issued? What type of deed is being given? What type of title insurance policy is being requested? And most importantly, in my mind, aside from the sales price, of course, which everyone's saying, well, the price, of course, the price, is the legal description. Because oftentimes how it comes in is only with maybe an address or a tax identification number. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I've litigated these myself. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not enough. Tax identification numbers get changed. Lots, sometimes you might think it's lot 20 and it's actually lot 19. So we have to do more investigating on our end to make sure that we have the right property. And under the law, it actually talks about the actual legal description is what should be included in a purchase agreement. So, segueing into what you were asking, Greg, when you get that title commitment, you want to make sure that the legal description that's either showing on Schedule A, which is typically the very first page of the substantive part of the commitment that you're looking at, is the correct legal description. You will see at the top left corner referenced an address. So it's important that we know what the address is, but that's not what's being insured. What's being insured is the land itself, and that is the legal description and the title, which has to be run so that we could make sure what requirements have to be fulfilled, which will segue me into the next aspect of the commitment. So in addition to the legal description, in my mind, that is number one. Secondly, you want to make sure that Schedule A shows who is currently vested in title. So if we have Jane Doe selling the property, I would hope that the commitment would show that Jane Doe is the owner of that property. But what if you see that John Smith's name is there? That's going to raise some questions. It's going to raise some red flags. And we know that we're going to have to get to the bottom of, wait a minute, Jane Doe's my seller. She signed this purchase agreement. Why is John Smith showing here? And the other part of that, obviously, is who is going to get an interest? Who is our proposed insured on this policy of title insurance that we're being asked to issue? And hopefully that's your buyer. So you want to double check and make sure that your buyer is listed there. And of course, the amount. You want to make sure that the amount is accurate and it's consistent with what's showing on your purchase agreement. So substantively, the next section is going to be Part 1 of Schedule B. Part 1 of Schedule B are the requirements. And those are the requirements that have to be fulfilled in order for a title insurance policy to actually be issued. So that's going to tell us we need a deed from your seller to your buyer. We need, if the buyer is getting a mortgage, we're going to need a mortgage and we're going to have to record that. If it's in a homeowners association and there might be dues owed, we're going to need to make sure that we have a correct payoff so that those can be paid. We're also going to make sure that if there are mortgages on the property, that those are actually shown. You want to make sure that those are shown. So, and to the point of a mortgage, I know that lately with the pandemic, people have been going out and getting second mortgages, but because of potentially, it could be a bridge loan. I had to do that myself. And I knew that when I went to sell my house, that second mortgage wasn't going to show on title yet because there wasn't enough time for it to actually get picked up on the records for it to be shown on the commitment. So it's important. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that it is incumbent on the seller to disclose everything. So if you look at that commitment and you're going over that with your client and you say, I don't see any mortgages on your property, is that accurate? And they say, oh no, I just did one a month or two ago. Oh, it's not showing. Then you need to make sure that you let the title insurance company know so that they can further investigate and get to the bottom of that to make sure that your lender gets paid at the closing. And again, to your point earlier, Greg and Paul, we are doing these things now so that they don't have to be addressed and dealt with after the fact. So there's not a claim, so there's not litigation. So we're trying to help streamline and make sure that those things are all being done effectively before you get to that closing table. So we don't have any problems when we actually get to the closing table. So, and then the final thing I want to mention, because there could be a myriad of different requirements, but the final thing that I want to mention that you're most often going to see on Part 1 of Schedule B, again, those being the requirements, is the taxes. What taxes have been paid and what is due and owing. Because obviously those are most often taken care of at the time of the closing. And then finally, we have Schedule B Part 2. And Schedule B Part 2 are what we refer to as the exceptions. So EXCEPTION, exception. What things are not going to be covered under the title policy, but more importantly, what things have been recorded against this property that your folks might want to know about. For instance, an easement, a tax lien, a construction lien, claims of interest. And unfortunately, they get recorded, claims of interest, and they could be for, again, a variety of different things. Most importantly, when something of that nature gets recorded, it becomes a, quote, cloud on title, unquote. So oftentimes you will see an item referenced on Schedule B2, and you will see a corresponding requirement on Schedule B1 that addresses that item so as to clear it up so that it will get cleared before closing, and then it is no longer going to be shown on the final policy of title insurance after closing. That gets issued either to the new buyer or to the new buyer's lender. So I know that's a lot of information.
Let me bring you back. Let me bring you back here, Beth, to Part 1 of Schedule B. You mentioned taxes.
Right.
And something that we have seen pop up in this area, and this is why I wanted the agents who are with us here and those that are going to listen to it in the future, think about the things that they need to look at. And again, this is not all inclusive. You should look at everything. But like you said, you've got the legal description, you got the names, and I have to tell you, numerous times I have listed a property in years past, and I would get the title, and all of a sudden I'm like, I got 2 names. And so I call the seller back and I go, well, who's this?
Right.
Well, that's somebody that we bought this home from on a land contract years ago. And it's like, well, did you pay them off? And oh yeah, we paid them off years ago. Did you get a deed at that time? No. Are they still living? Because if they're not living, we got another issue, right?
Exactly.
And then we go down to Part 1, the taxes, and you've got one of the things that I saw multiple problems happen is the homestead. I believe it's right in there where it says if it's 100% homesteaded.
Correct.
And many times, agents are out there and the listing agent maybe has put it on there as it's 100% homesteaded, and it turns out it's not. Well, you know what? You can't just flip that switch because that local taxing authority is not going to make that change on that day. So if it's unhomesteaded, non-homesteaded, there's going to be a big tax bill there that buyer was not expecting. And if you, the agent, don't alert the people to this fact, when they find out they've got to kick in another $2,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more because it's non-homesteaded, they are going to be irritated. And so
Sorry.
somebody's playing with your lights.
I wasn't moving enough.
Okay. Okay.
Making out to let Bree know that we need to get those automatic lights adjusted.
All right. So
real quickly, anyone watching, if you guys want to throw a curveball, you have questions about title, feel free to interject and ask a question, and I will pose this question to Bree. We'll see if we can stump her.
Bree?
Oh no, Beth. Sorry, I just said Bree.
It's okay.
And by the way, even if we don't respond to it now, even later on, if they want to send questions, we will forward these to Beth and get answers for everybody, whatever they want. Because our goal is to make sure that the 5-star agents are the most educated agents out there in the marketplace. And we want to make sure that you are avoiding all the pitfalls and mistakes that others are making because they don't spend time listening to moments like this.
There's one more thing, Greg, that I would like to mention, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that I probably should do a screen share, but this is Schedule A of a commitment.
Okay.
And if you can see there, it says commitment date.
Okay.
I'm going to share a little bit of tidbit that I think a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people that actually work in this industry don't even really understand what that means. So the commitment date is actually what we refer to, my lingo, as the effective date. And that effective date is how far is the Register of Deeds for that county where the property is located, how far along are they? In other words, so if you see, so today is May 19th, if you see that it says April 16th, that means that from April 16th to now, we have no idea what may have been recorded on title in that date, in between those times. So back to my prior example, if someone has done a second mortgage and it's within that time period, when we go to search the chain of title for that property, that second mortgage won't get picked up. That's to say as well that any other things that get recorded within that time period will not show on title. So when looking at that, and oftentimes the commitment gets updated, that effective date, which now shows on the commitment as the quote unquote commitment date, it will show you that title has been updated now to a new date. So, and if things are picked up during that time frame, you will see that those also get added as exceptions and potentially new requirements. So every time there's an update, it's important that the whole commitment again gets reviewed.
Thank you. So I want to keep going, and I'm going to ask you where the agents find easements.
I'm sorry, what?
Where do agents find like recorded easements on the title?
Right. So an easement should be listed on Schedule B Part 2, the exceptions from coverage. So in addition, it could be that we are being asked to insure an easement. Most often that would be in the case of a private drive or someone, if they didn't have an easement to get to their land, they would technically be landlocked. In other words, they wouldn't have a right to go across someone else's land or from a public road through someone else's land to get to their land. So in that instance, we would call it an ingress and egress easement. So oftentimes you will see that easement referenced along with the legal description for the property. And that shows you that you are being insured for that easement. So there are different types of easements. There are easements that benefit you, and there are easements that burden you. So an easement that would burden my land is that someone else has the right to drive across my land to get to their property. An easement that benefits me, it is an easement that I can use that is on someone else's land that benefits me so that I can get to my land or use it for another purpose. It could be that I have the right to go across someone else's land to get to a barn that I have in the back. or there is some sort of an encroachment onto my property and I have allowed someone else to, quote unquote, have an easement so that they can have that there. They don't have the right to own the property. So ownership we refer to as fee simple, but an easement is a right that is given to someone else, and it can only be terminated by both parties signing that in writing. Now, most easements, the term is run with the land. So that means that every time your property gets sold, it isn't necessarily the case unless it is an egress easement, a private drive, something of that nature. It might not necessarily be on the deed, but you're actually going to take subject to that, and your heirs, your successors, your assigns, any new owner to your property is going to take subject to those unless they are terminated of record. So it's very important that people understand what these easement rights are. So to your point, Greg, yes, they would look on Schedule B, Part 2, and it should be something identified as simply as easement as described in document recorded at such and so. And you can then follow up and ask for a copy of all of those documents that are listed on the commitment.
All right. So for just, I'm going to say hypothetical, but in reality, it's happened numerous times. We have seen it where a person has purchased a property. Somehow, some way, they did not evidently tell their agent what their intentions were to do after they bought it, such as they were either going to put a pool in or they were going to put in a pole barn. And this can go in two different ways, an easement, or there could also be a rule inside of a neighborhood association.
Right.
And both of these can cause the real estate agent and their clients a huge nightmare. So picture you close on the house, you get a call from the buyer, and they say, hey, we just had our backhoe out here digging the pool, and we just got stopped because someone informed us that we're digging in a public utilities easement.
Right.
Or we had one where somebody was going to put a all-terrain vehicle or one of these trailers that people camp in, and a fifth wheel, and they were going to set it alongside their house, only to find out that the association rules said this isn't allowed.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that the 5-star agents have their antenna go up and look for these things that could trigger these rules or easements that are going to get in their client's way.
Yep, and those are great examples, Greg. And I can tell you at our last house, when we lived on the east side of the state, we had those very things happen. We moved in with the intention of putting a pool in. And so it was very important to us that we understood what was in the backyard. Was there anything that was crossing our property? And lo and behold, there was. There was a storm and a sewer agreement, and we had to be very careful where we could put that pool in. We were inches, so to speak, from that. And where did our property end? Because we backed up to a common area. So where did it actually, our land stop and the association property in the back start?
Or was it an undividable interest?
That's right. That's right. Because we certainly weren't going to be building our pool on the association land, and the association made sure that, because to your point, there were restrictions and bylaws that were recorded and that were also shown on Schedule B, Part 2 of our commitment, so that we could understand, oh, guess, if we're going to put a pool in, I guess that we need to get our association's approval on that. And oh, by the way, not just the association, then you're going to have to go to the municipality, which of course isn't on record, but permitting and again, dealing with the easements that went across the property. All of those things should be identified and listed out for you on Schedule B2. Now, again, let me step back for just a minute, because sometimes there's a difference. You need to make sure that what you're reviewing is an owner's policy, and not necessarily a lender's policy. It could be that if you're dealing with a refinance or property that isn't necessarily going through a buy-sell scenario, that a loan policy or a commitment for issuance of a loan policy may not have as extensive requirements as you might have when you are outright selling your property. And there's a distinction to be made there, because typically speaking, you're going to expect that the sell side is going to have a more extensive commitment. But that said, most title agencies, when you don't have both sides of the transaction, are going to try, for the most part, not always, but to match each other's commitments, to make sure that we're showing all the same things and that we have pretty similar, if not exactly the same, requirements. And it's a nice check and balance. But to your point, Greg, yes, those things should be showing on Schedule B2. And again, they should ask, I would think, ask for copies of those. Yeah. Those are things that we have in our records that can be easily produced and given, so that, yes, you're aware. Or perhaps your client is going to build a home. They need to know what the association rules provide for. What are the setback lines? What are those requirements? And they could be different than your municipality's requirements. Can only certain types of structures be built? Are sheds allowed? Are they not allowed? Is a fence allowed? Are they not allowed? And on and on and on.
And so all those things can be picked up. And if an agent is aware and is educated, they can use this title policy and they can see all of these things. And so when they get to the end and something blows up, Don or Eric or any of the other managers here will probably force the agent to go back and look at the title policy and see what was in there.
Right.
And so when I look at this too, I think about the difference between a condominium association where, you've got the rows of condos and it's clear this is a condo. There's other places where what we call a site condo. How do you designate that any place in the title, or does it just reference condominium is a condominium association is here? And so even if the people see a single family home with a lot, with a yard and a fence, that still can be a condo subject to rules, association rules and regs, bylaws and whatnot, even though it looks like a regular neighborhood. And we've had agents who've closed on these things and the buyers didn't know until the last minute that it was a site condo and they were subject to rules.
And so the easiest way to determine whether you're in a subdivision versus a condominium, and you're right, you can't always think of a condominium as an apartment complex, which I think a lot of people think, oh, there's multi-units, they're all in one building, or multiple buildings with multiple units. But you have site condominiums, which look like any developed subdivision would, with individual lots. So the difference is, on your legal description, you will see that it's referred to as a unit. So instead of lot X, you're going to see unit X. Instead of it saying subdivision, subdivision number 1, you're going to see such and so condominium, blah, 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 plan, subdivision, master deed. So the master deed is what we refer to in terms of what the restrictions and the rules are. And in addition to the master deed, there are typically separate bylaws,
right,
that are also applicable. And then, of course, the master deed can have multiple amendments to it.
Yeah.
So typically you will see an exception that includes all the language for the master deed and any and all amendments that have been made to that master deed. Sometimes you'll see what's called a superseding master deed or a consolidated master deed. And you're right, that sets forth all the rules and regulations as it relates to that property. But the easiest way is unit versus lot.
Yep. You mentioned something else earlier. Paul, you want to get in here?
One question here.
Sure.
It's a quick one too, I think. Or maybe two, actually. So someone was asking about tax liens. So if there's a tax lien on a property, does it have to be paid off completely prior to going to a closing, or can you take the proceeds from the closing and then pay it off?
I think that's in a way the same thing, Paul. So yes, we would expect that a tax lien, because a tax lien it attaches to the property, but the way it's recorded is it is recorded by the person's name. So if our seller has a state or a federal tax lien, that is going to be shown as an exception on Schedule B2, and is going to be shown as a requirement to make sure that that gets paid off at or before closing. I will say this, dealing with the IRS, if someone decided, oh, I'm going to take care of that and pay it off myself, and it's 2 weeks ago, the chances are that the IRS, arguably the state of Michigan as well, they are not going to be able to release that and get it recorded of record prior to our closing. So then it's going to be a question of, well, how do we actually establish that it was paid off? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes it's the easier way to handle it is to make sure that those funds are paid at the closing rather than before the closing, so that the monies are actually being handled through the title agency, that we know that there's a disbursement that is going to go out of the title agency, and then the title agency is going to make sure that there is a discharge that follows after that money is sent out from whomever the governmental entity is.
Okay. And I have another question. This one's from Renee Malberg. She asked, does your agent support team, if people who aren't familiar with Star Title support team, we have a group of people who are basically designed to work directly with the agents to work through all these curative type things. They're the ones helping get all this stuff figured out. They're coordinating between agent, realtor, bank, other title company, sometimes townships, things like this. So the question was, does your agent care, or a closer? Does anyone at your company ask if there are any special assessments being considered in the condo or site condo purchase?
Oh, so being considered versus actually already assessed.
That's an interesting. Yes. We probably wouldn't ask if there's anything coming down the road, because that's really not our business.
Well, well, not necessarily so. As a matter of fact, I want to say within the last couple of weeks, I think someone reached out to one of our examiners asking that very question, or saying, you know, I want to say that I heard about there being a road special assessment actually in a condo. Mm-hmm. And we reached out to the municipality, we investigated further, and we said, we're not coming up with anything. We've reviewed the documents, we've reached out to the municipality, and we're not seeing anything. That's not to say that there isn't, at which point it would probably be best to reach out to the association directly. Mm-hmm. To ask that question, whether it be a condo association or a homeowners association. But yeah, to your point, Paul, most often what we're looking for is something that is in the public records, because most often assessments do have to get recorded to provide notice that there is an assessment or an impending or upcoming assessment. But for the most part, we're going to reach out to the municipality to obtain a payoff. And sometimes special assessments have to be researched separate from the actual taxes themselves. Our hope is that BSNA and the entity that we use to reach out to about taxes have the most updated information. So my suggestion is you want to make sure that you're looking at that BSNA report as well, which will hopefully give you that most up-to-date information. But in terms of if there's an impending or future assessment, yeah, we can only make so many inquiries. So that's oftentimes your seller who might be disclosing that. And to your point, when you get to the closing table, our current owner / seller is going to fill out what's called an owner's affidavit, where they're being asked to disclose several different things. Are there encroachments on your property? Are there easements on your property? Have you filed bankruptcy? A variety of different things, including, are there assessments that are against your property? Our closer should be looking at that to say, is there anything here that I don't know compared to looking at the commitment? And if there's something that's not matching or something that's not quite right, we may have to stop the closing to ask more questions. So to your point, when we started this whole podcast, is if you know of something or your folks tell you of something and it's not being disclosed on that commitment, then the title agency needs to be made aware of it so there aren't any surprises at the closing table. We're trying to avoid those and work through all of those curative items to do our due diligence to make sure that when you get to that closing table, it's nice and smooth.
Yep.
Okay, Paul, I'm going to finish up with one last question here. And what we can see here right now is that there is a need for more discussion because we can break this down a lot further. But one thing that I wanted to just touch on briefly is quitclaim deeds. And I've heard more about this in the last few weeks that as a title company, when you see a quitclaim deed, that to you, I don't believe is like the solid end all, okay, it's a done deal. You're not going to totally accept a quitclaim deed or not, or basically any attorney, any title company is going to question a quitclaim deed because it's not the same as a warranty deed.
That's
Can you
correct.
go into that just let's say I give you 5 minutes to talk about that.
Sure, absolutely. You put me on a timer.
All right. Because this one could probably go 20.
It could. So yeah, just to overly summarize, I guess, there is a huge distinction between a quit, Q-U-I-T, quit claim deed and a warranty deed. So if I were to sell you my home, I'm guessing that you would want a warranty deed. So that would be me as the seller warranting to you as the buyer that I actually own title, that it's free and clear, that I'm properly seized of it, meaning I am really the one to possess it and own it. And there are other warranties of title, as we refer to, that go along with the warranty deed. A quitclaim deed is empty. It gives no warranties whatsoever. So the way we like to phrase it in the industry is, I can convey you anything in a quitclaim deed, but if I don't have any interest in that property and I sign a quitclaim deed over to you, I have given you nothing. So that quitclaim deed is only as good as the person signing the quitclaim deed, in that instance, your grantor. So yes, if we see a quitclaim deed or quitclaim deeds, a series of them that pop up within the last 5 years, we have a specific requirement to investigate further. We have to do our due diligence, and this is for everyone's benefit because, as you might imagine, there are bad people out there that try to take other people's property. And if someone, unbeknownst to most people, aren't paying attention to what's on their title, what's been recorded or what hasn't. So when the title company does the chain and they pick up these quitclaim deeds and they say, something seems off here, we need to ask some more questions. So you will oftentimes see that there's a requirement that says, yes, we need to investigate further. We might need to look into who the notary is. Were they actually licensed at the time that they supposedly notarized that document? Was there some sort of agreement that we don't know about? Oftentimes, we will see, for instance, it's not always that a quitclaim deed is for $1 or for under $100. Sometimes you'll see a quitclaim deed and they're handwritten and it says $5,000 or $10,000. Well, I would like to know what the agreement was, because there is something in Michigan called the Statute of Frauds. And the Statute of Frauds says that if you are selling real property, there has to be a written contract for that. If there is not a written contract, it's invalid. So I probably would look at that and say, oh, well, let's see if we can find that person and make sure, A, that there was a written agreement, and B, that they actually received the consideration that's stated on that deed.
That's interesting. I've never heard that.
Because unfortunately, there's lots of fraud, and there are folks out there who sometimes try to play middleman. And in that case, what I question is, do we have someone who's elderly who is potentially being taken advantage of?
Yeah.
And if you know that the SEV for the property is $100,000, but they signed a deed conveying it for $5,000, again, the alarms start to go off. So it depends on the circumstance. It depends on what we're seeing on title, but a quitclaim deed is uninsured. So most warranty deeds have title insurance associated with them. A quitclaim deed, it's very uncommon that you would have insurance associated with that. So we refer to them as uninsured deeds. So anytime we see an uninsured deed within the last 5 years, we are going to ask more questions. We need to get to the bottom of it. We need to make sure that those people are who they say they are, that when we get to the closing table and we're asking for identification and we're trying to make sure that those are the people who say that they say they are, and that we don't have what I have actually defended in court, where you have a straw buyer and a straw purchaser who have worked together to scam a lender to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of proceeds selling a property that they never really owned.
Yeah.
And so the same holds true with if we see a discharge of mortgage within the last couple of years and there's not a new mortgage that's associated with that. We're going to want to make sure, was that mortgage really paid off? Is this really a legitimate mortgage? Or is someone trying to fabricate something here so that they're showing that there's obviously more equity, which means there's going to be more proceeds in the seller's pocket at the time of the sale? Yeah. So in a nutshell.
Wow.
Yes. So, it's a vast subject, and I wanted to begin. I feel like the real estate agents, the experienced ones, they may have a pretty good handle on this, but the newer agents, incredibly important to hear this and understand what's going on and what you are actually doing, because people say, well, I don't need any title insurance. That's just a waste of money. And it's like, oh my word. And it's like, you hear this and you go, people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. They want to make sure that what they're getting is what they thought they were getting. And they want to certify it. And that's what you guys are doing. And I know periodically that agents can get a little exercise because they feel like some of this stuff is not of value, and yet some tiny little thing here, as we've discussed today, could turn into be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Exactly. And so, Beth, I appreciate you coming on, and I really want to have more of these. I think there's so much more to explore here that would be beneficial to our agents. And Paul, any closing comments?
Nope.
All right.
I do have one small thing that I want to mention, Greg, if that's okay.
Yes.
I know that there have been advertisements periodically on television and elsewhere about this product called Title Lock.
Yes, thank you.
It is not title insurance. So it is not going to protect you in the event I just referenced, that someone sold a property for $5,000 that was really worth $100,000, and unknowingly they were stripped of their property, so to speak. If that happened and they had title insurance, one of the coverages is you are not of record the owner of that property. You will be protected for that. So this title lock that people are seeing is more I'm just going to call it a fraud protection. There are actually some counties in the state of Michigan who have taken it upon themselves that anytime a document is recorded against a person's property, they send a notice to that person either by email or mail saying, hey, we want to alert you that something was just recorded against your property. Basically saying, are you aware of this? Do you know what this is? And you might want to check with your given county that folks can sign up for that and get those alerts, which are very helpful. That's essentially what this title lock is. It's, hey, something got,
right? It's
say
like,
that again?
it's like two-factor authentication. It's like when I log into my 401k to see how I'm doing or my IRA, it emails me and says, hey, so your computer in Standale or wherever just logged in. Was this you?
Exactly. It might not be as quick as that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a notification. So that's all that title lock does.
That's a great thing. We should maybe find a list if we know the counties, Beth, that this happens. And I would almost see us including this in a closing package in the future, potentially, to say to the buyers, you know, here, if you want to, you can register and send this in and be notified if anything is done with your title. I would think that would be a great service to our consumers and our customers and our clients.
And the distinction there too being, and I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor it because I know everyone has many, many things to get to, but a title insurance policy looks backwards. Title lock is looking forwards.
Yeah.
So we're interested. What is showing against your property up until the time you get to the closing table? A title lock like that is looking to see what happens after you close on that property and you are now the owner of that property. So 2 different time periods as well. So sorry, I just wanted to get that tidbit in there.
Okay, thanks, Beth.
You're welcome.
Guys, thanks everybody. We'll see you later.
Later.
Bye.